Hi, welcome to Lachlan Likes a Thing, a show where I take a thing and see whether or not I like it. Now the thing we're looking at in this video is iOS 7, and this video is going to be a little different from my other videos. It's going to be a little more ranty, just because in this video we're specifically going to look at some of the changes they've made with the interface in iOS 7, which I think should not have been made, and they've introduced real usability issues. Now, let me preface this video by saying that I'm a really happy iPhone user. I've had an iPhone 3G, an iPhone 4, and this is my trusty iPhone 5. And I've always been pretty happy with the operating system. There's some things that I liked about the operating system, some things I didn't like, but overall, pretty happy with the experience. With iOS 7, I feel like they've made changes for the sake of a new look without really thinking about why the interfaces worked a particular way in the first place. And this video is not going to be a video about the merits of the new aesthetic. I mean, aesthetic is a personal preference thing. It's not going to be even a look at the merits of skeuomorphic design. Again, that's kind of a design philosophy question. This video is specifically going to be about changes and missteps with the interface that I think just should not have passed basic usability testing. This stuff should have been picked up with feedback and should not have been implemented. So with that said, let's take a closer look. Now, my first issue of iOS 7 pops up even before you really even start using the phone, and it's with the new passcode lock screen. I use a passcode on my phone for safety. And on the old version of iOS, now this is an iPod Touch running an older version of iOS, this is how a passcode lock looks. When you press a button, you get a little bit of feedback from the blue light that tells you which button you've pressed, but nothing more than that. It's not very fancy, but it works well. You get just enough feedback and you put the button in and it's good. Now, with iOS 7, they've introduced a fade out animation on the buttons. So when you press it, the button lights up and then fades out over a course of a second. That means it's really easy to tell which button you've pressed. It looks good, but it also means that it is very easy to read someone's passcode lock because the buttons will fade out over time. Now, this is a really basic security issue. I didn't even realize this was a problem until a friend of mine pointed out that he could read my passcode lock immediately as soon as I punched it in because of this new fade out animation. So I don't care if the passcode lock looks better. This is a security issue. It shouldn't have been implemented. It shouldn't have been changed. And I don't know why they changed just to make it look fancier. Now, once you get into the home screen, my next issue of iOS 7 is that the default font for app labels now is Helvetica Neue. And Helvetica Neue is a really lightweight typeface that's really modern and cool looking, and I'm an art student, I've used it in designs, it looks really slick. But at this font size, on this home screen, these app labels are not legible. I don't think that this is a very good system font to be using to use for system labels. Now, thankfully, you can go into general, accessibility, and then go to bold text, and you'll get the old Helvetica bold fonts back, and you can see that in a second. But honestly, how many less experienced users, how many older users with poorer eyesight are gonna know that option to change it back to the bold fonts even exists inside the interface? So once again, we go through this silly fancy passcode lock screen where you can guess the passcode, and then we look at these labels. Now, with the Helvetica bold font, I think this is much more legible. I think it doesn't look bad. I don't know why they made the change from the default font. Again, I think it's changed for the sake of change. Now, my next issue of iOS 7 is with the new app folders. Now, with the new app folders, we get pages in our app folders. Yay, that's great. We can put more apps per folder. But the problem is now, on each page of an app folder, we can only see 9 applications at a time. And it means that we had to do more scrolling to see more apps. Now, in the older versions of iOS, when you brought up an app folder, you could see 12 applications at a time. Now, you may say scrolling is no big deal. Scrolling is very easy. I don't mind doing that. But the whole point of interface design is to reduce the number of steps a user has to take to get anything done. And Steve Jobs once famously said to his employees that he suggested that by reducing the amount of time that the user has to wait for an interface to work, the accumulated seconds would add up to a lifetime, and their designers were saving lives, literally saving lives, by improving the interface and making it more responsive. Well, in this case, I gotta say, Apple, you're killing me. There was no reason. I have a nice big phone screen here.
I can fit an extra 3 icons, surely at least an extra 3 on the bottom. I don't know why they changed it. They reduced it for no good reason. Maybe they wanted this to look proportionally square, just like the app icons themselves. Who cares? Okay, you're making it less usable for the sake of making an aesthetic change. Now, my next issue of iOS 7 is with the new music app, and this is a big one for me because I have a 64 gig iPhone, I have a big music collection, and I spend a lot of time scrolling through my music collection to work out what I might like to listen to next. And the problem with this new music app is that in the albums view and in the artist view, they've blown up the album art so that you can only see 4 or 5 albums or artists per page, which means you have to do a lot more scrolling to find anything in your library. Now, this is compared to the old interface where if you see in the songs view, they've had the icons for the album art just about the same size as they used to be. And you can see that there's a lot more information per page presented to the user just by having this smaller album art. I have no idea why they've blown up the album art this big in the new interface. Now, it looks nice. Heaven forbid you haven't downloaded album art for all your albums, because then you're going to look at a lot of blank squares that are going to be big and ugly. I think it's a change that shouldn't have been made. It's made the music app more difficult to use.
Now, there's a lot more things about iOS 7 that I could complain about. I don't like the new translucency effects. I think they look splotchy and messy, and they look like a variety of colorful new molds are now growing on your phone. But thankfully, you can turn those off. I don't care about the new parallax effect, frankly. I think it's a waste of battery life, but again, you can turn that off. I don't like the new app icons. I think they look juvenile, but unfortunately, you can't turn those off. Now, those are all aesthetic things. I can't complain too much about those. It's a question of personal choice. What I do have issue with, what I have big concerns with, is the direction the company is going in terms of introducing new interfaces with seemingly no attention paid to how those changes will affect usability. Now, there are some things that I do like about iOS 7. I do like the new control center and the new notification center. I think it makes it much easier to access frequently used functions. But this is honestly something that I can't really give them points for, because this is something that people have been asking for years and years and years, and something that they should honestly have borrowed from Android a long time ago. And in the current implementation, I don't see why it took several years for them to do it, because it doesn't work any better than it does on Android. Now, there's a lot of talk about Apple and innovation, and honestly, I don't care if Apple is not the most innovative company in the world. Apple is meant to be the company where when they introduce something, they may not be the first people to introduce it, but when they do, they're the ones who get it right, and the user experience is really good. Now, what really upsets me about this update is that it feels like they've implemented changes without thinking about usability, without thinking about why the interfaces work the way they did, and they've just changed them for the sake of changing them to have a clean, new aesthetic. And, you know, that's kind of really troubling for a company that's meant to put a priority on user interface above all else. Now, maybe these are temporary things, and if they do update this stuff and they do improve this stuff, I'll update the description of my video to reflect that, and I'll be really happy if that happens. But in the meantime, it does feel like all the changes that they've introduced that are good have been borrowed from other operating systems. All the changes that they've introduced themselves of their own initiative are bad. And that's really not an encouraging sign for any operating system. Anyway, if you've watched this far, thanks for bearing with me. I know it's been very ranty, but honestly, this is something I care about a lot, because this is a phone that I use every single day, and I've used it and enjoyed it, every operating system version up until this one. And honestly, iOS 7 isn't terrible. I just don't like the new direction the company appears to be going in. Now, if you agree, please like this video, and hopefully Apple will listen to some of the early feedback about iOS 7 and kind of roll back some of their changes. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks to everyone who's liked my other videos and subscribed to my channel. You can talk to me on Twitter at LockLikesAThing or on Facebook at facebook.com/LachlanLikesAThing, and enjoy the rest of your day.